Welcome back to Alpaca My Bags. We've got a great show for you today. If you haven't yet, could you please give us a subscribe and a review? It helps us heaps to not only keep making the show, but to make it better for you guys. So I'm your host, Erin. Today on the pod, we are chatting with Dan. Hey, Dan.
Hi.
So Dan is a world traveler foremost, also a digital advertising manager. And Dan is here to tell us about the time he was bit by one of the world's most poisonous snakes while traveling. Literally my worst nightmare. I will also share some tidbits about getting ill abroad, and we're going to talk a little bit about how to prepare yourself for medical disasters while traveling. But we're also going to talk about dangerous animals in foreign countries.
Wait, but Erin, is there anything you'd like to tell us about that's on your mind recently?
Literally the only thing I've been thinking about this week is how badly I need it to be warm out. And we're almost there, but winter in Canada is truly awful.
The worst.
I just need it to be over. We're almost there. Okay, so normally we save the juicy travel stories for the end of the show, but I literally cannot wait to hear this. I've truly been waiting months. I told Dan I wanted to know this story, and then I was like, wait, no, you'll tell me on the podcast. So I've just been anxiously waiting for months to hear this story. So just tell us what happened.
Okay, well, thanks for having me. I feel like this is the longest story of life. So where to start? Right when I started dating my boyfriend, we went to Belize for a week. So we went to Key-Cocker, which is a tiny little island. You have to go. It's 3 streets long. It's the clearest water you've ever seen. It's gorgeous. So yeah, we went to this little island for the week. And the final day, we went to do a jungle tour. So we went caving. So basically, you go
you
on
seem not excited about it at
I'm
all.
reliving the nightmare.
Yeah.
So basically, we went to do a jungle tour. Usually when you go, I think there's usually about 15 to 20 people that do it. The day we went, it was just the two of us because it was December 23rd. So it was Christmas time. I guess a lot of people weren't doing that kind of stuff around then. Mm-hmm. So the morning tour is usually you go see the Aztec ruins. And then in the afternoon, you go to the jungle and you do where you're sitting on a tube and you go down the river in the jungle. So that day it switched for whatever reason. So we went to the jungle first and then we went to do the Aztec thing after. So yeah, we went in the jungle and it's about an hour tour and you're just going through the river. And it was kind of one of those tubes where you have the front person and the back person and you're kind of sitting on it together. And while we're walking through the jungle, I'm getting eaten alive by mosquitoes. And I was this is when Zika was huge. So I was great, I got Zika already.
We're already doomed.
Yeah.
It's bad for the start.
So right from the start, I'm getting attacked. They love me. Mosquitoes love me for whatever reason. So yeah, we get into the river and I sit in the front of the tube and my boyfriend at the time sits in the back of the tube. And I think we just started dating. So we were dating for a week at the time. So we barely knew each other. We actually booked the trip before we started dating, which was funny.
Oh, that's
so
hilarious.
We're should we be booking a trip? Is this going to happen?
I was going to say, do you always start relationships that way?
God. I know. I quit jobs apparently too. So.
I mean, I get it. I met my boyfriend in a hostel.
Yeah.
So
anything for travel. So we started the tour and basically you're going through all these different cave systems. It was cool. You can't see anything when you're in the caves. So it was kind of scary because you could hear the bats and everything. And I'm okay, I'm getting bitten by bugs. Why are we doing this? God knows how much money we spend for this. But I was whatever. I should have just stayed on the island. But anyways, we're going through. Our tour guide's he's amazing. He's trying to show us things even though you can't see anything. And then we actually finished the second cave, I think. And we were back in daylight, back on the river. And my boyfriend was who's my fiance now, he wanted to switch sides. So he wanted to go in front and I would go in back. But we couldn't get out because we were literally in a river. So I was okay, we'll do it after. So when this was happening, I got attacked about 5 minutes later. So it would have been him that was attacked. But luckily, for him, I guess, I stayed there. But I'll get into that later, too. So we were going in the river, and then the best part about the story is the third cave that we went into, it was called Hell. Yeah.
And you were literally going into it.
We were literally going into hell, yeah. Without knowing it. Also, I haven't told this story in a really long time, so it's bringing up a lot of memories.
I love how there's so many omens on the way to this.
So we go into hell, and we're going in the cave, and there's like a waterfall to the left of me, and the guide was like showing us the waterfall. He was in his own little thing, by the way, so it's me and Ryan, and then the guy in his own tube, and he's showing us the waterfall. You can kind of see the water, and you can hear it and everything. And then I felt something. It almost felt like, you know, when you're a kid and there's like burrs, like people would throw burrs at you.
Yeah.
Like that. I don't know. It was very like light, almost like not even a bee sting. It was like nothing. And I felt it, and I almost thought something dropped from the top of the cave. So I was like, okay. And then I felt it again. And then I realized something is on me or biting me or something. So I automatically like hit it off with my left hand.
Wait, you're in the tube at this time?
I'm in the tube, at the front of the tube.
What?
And the kicker to the story is...
I needed to crack a beer.
Yeah.
This is getting to be too much. I thought you were safe in water from these things.
You are? Okay, so I'll get to that too. Yeah, I have a death wish. So basically, my feet weren't even in the water. I was cross-legged onto the tube. So I wasn't even touching the water. And it was my right thigh, my upper right thigh, that I felt everything happening to. So it's like boom, boom. And then I realized, went like this with my left hand, even though no one can see right now.
He's showing us visually what he did.
And then I felt something on me, hit it off, and immediately from my toes, I felt my toes going numb, and I can feel it travel slowly up my body, and literally just like picture just slowly going up your body, your whole body going numb. And when I got to my heart, it started racing, and then it kept going up. Immediately, I got like a migraine headache. Like it felt like someone was bashing me over the head, and then I couldn't breathe, and I was kind of like heaving. And then I realized at that moment, I was like, I was poisoned. Like, I know I was poisoned.
You didn't see the snake.
So this is the thing. So after it bit me and I kind of hit it off into the water, immediately the tour guide was like, throw me your camera, throw me your camera. And like, we all kind of went like this with our headlamp to look over. And you just see a little snake, maybe like 3 feet. Like it looked like a baby, but it was like in the water, like just... moving onto the water, on the top of the water, going away from us.
What?
And as this is happening, I'm feeling all the symptoms, and I'm like, I'm fucked. Like, I don't know what's gonna happen.
Oh, no. Okay, I'm actually gonna interject,
yes,
because I feel like this is a good time to tell everyone the specifics of the snake.
Go for it.
So I did a little research. I'm going to read, so excuse me if I sound like I'm reading. It's because I am. So a Fer-de-Lance is a species of pit viper, that sounds terrifying, that grows up to 6 feet long and is found in the tropical Americas and Asia. It can open its jaws up to 180 degrees, and its fangs can be 1 inch long. The snake is responsible for half of the venomous bites in Central America. Its venom is hemotoxic. So this means that it destroys red blood cells and it causes hemolysis. I don't know how to say that. So it disrupts your blood clotting, and it also attacks other types of cells and tissues. So it can cause profound tissue damage and often organ failure. These types of bites are really painful, and it can lead to infection, amputation, and death. A little side note, I was Googling the snake because I wanted to read other accounts of like being bitten, and I stumbled across an article on Outside Online, and it was by this guy who is a scout for the show Naked and Afraid. Have you seen this show?
I know this article about what happened to him because when I was doing
Googled
research.
It, obviously.
Yeah.
Anyways, he's an executive producer. His name is Steve Rankin, and he writes a pretty intense narrative of like what happened when he was bit by one. I don't know why, I just thought it was funny that like this happens to the people who scout for that show, because I always think of that show as like really silly, but I'm like, wow, it's actually a dangerous job.
Yeah.
Okay, anyways, so that's the Fer-de-Lance. Now you can tell us what happened after you were bit.
Yeah, so we saw the snake. I had no idea what snake it was. And I had no idea why he wanted to take a photo. But the reason is because you need to know what snake bit you to get the proper anti-venom. Because let's say we didn't have a camera, we possibly would have been screwed, because each anti-venom, I don't know, from what I hear, anti-venom is basically taking the venom of a snake and making an anti-venom out of it.
Right.
So you have to know what bit you.
So it's kind of like a vaccine.
So that happened. All the symptoms were happening, and we had no choice but to literally keep going down the river. And luckily, when it happened, we were towards the end of the cave, so we were back out in daylight at least, because I was like, God, like I don't want to be in a cave going through this, you know. I can't see anything. So yeah, we went out in daylight, and we just had no choice but to keep floating down the river. And like, this sounds so dramatic, but basically we saw like land towards the end of the lake area, the river.
Yeah. And
I just wanted to get there because I literally thought I was gonna die. So I wanted to get off the boat and just lay on land. Like, and I know it sounds dramatic, but I'm not kidding. Like, that's what I wanted to do. It was so scary.
It.
Yeah.
I can imagine, like, that would literally be hell. You're, like, trapped on this tube, and you're like, I just need help right now. I can't have it because I'm floating on a tube.
Yeah, so it was nuts. I can tell that my boyfriend at the time was, like, freaking out behind me, but he was holding my hand, and I was like, you gotta be strong. Like, you know?
That's crazy, really. Did the guide, like, tell you to do anything? Was he, like, tie something around your leg?
So, actually, that brings another point, too, that I forgot about. I kept saying, when it happened, I was like, am I gonna be okay? Am I gonna be okay? And I kept screaming, am I gonna be okay? And he said nothing, like, complete silence. He said nothing. Like, I think I asked maybe 4 or 5 times. And then he's saying nothing. So I'm like, what is going on? Like, at least, like, lie? Like, I'm terrified.
Try to make me feel better.
Yeah. So the good news is we just kept floating down the river. And I was holding my head because it was so painful. Like, I just remember the most painful headache I've ever had. And it started to dissipate. I could, like, feel my legs again, and I could start breathing again. So I was like, okay, like, this is good. Like, it's not getting worse. And I think he said, like, we were going to be back at the beginning of the jungle in, like, a few minutes or 10 minutes or something. So I just held on, kept going down the river.
Were you mobile? Like, could you move your limbs or anything?
Yeah, I can move everything. By the time we got towards the end, like, at the entrance of the jungle. But I was definitely in a little bit of pain. Like, it started to hurt my leg. So yeah, I was bit twice on my upper thigh, and then I was bit on my left thumb, because when I was trying to hit it off, it bit me on my left thumb as well. One of the things. And I actually took pictures on Instagram, right? Like, I took pictures, and I posted it like an idiot, thinking like, oh, like, snake bite, haha. Like, I posted it right after it happened, because the symptoms went away. And
so you're like, I'm fine.
Yeah, and I'm way too optimistic. I was like, oh, I'm fine, like, whatever. But right away, like, bruising started setting in. So my thumb started going purple, and I had pictures of that. And then the way you know it's a Fer-de-Lance, apparently, I found this out after, is they typically bite you twice. And that's a way of knowing, I guess.
And it doesn't, like, hold on to you.
It was kind of just like do, and then that was it. So yeah, that happened.
So was it in the tube?
It came up into the tube and bit my thigh. And that's another thing that's crazy is when I did research on them, they typically will not attack you unless they're provoked. So you have to literally go into their space and then they'll attack. And I think what happened was it was crossing the river. Because they're typically not in water, so this is another weird thing. Yeah. It must have been crossing the river, and the tube must have been in its way, and then it just attacked and, like, came up onto the tube. Yeah. So it literally came up onto the tube. Like, my feet were not even in the water, which is terrifying.
I'm never going to be able to go tubing again. Like, never.
And it was funny. After all this happened, like, the story is going to keep going. It might be 2 episodes. But my friend went to Costa Rica the week after this happened, and she posted a picture of people tubing in the jungle. And I was like, my heart sank. I was like, why? Like, don't do that. What are you doing? Like, you know what just happened to me? But with that said, the tour company we went with, they were like a phenomenal company where they had like all 5-star reviews, and they've never encountered this before. Because obviously, like, you'll hear more about the story, but they did not know how to handle the situation. So it's never happened before. And they've been in operation probably for like ever.
It was a freak accident.
So it was a freak accident. Yeah, totally. Wow. Yeah.
So what was he like, did he have a phone? Was he calling people to come help?
No. So, I mean, the story is going to get really crazy, but he kind of acted like nothing happened. Like, he definitely swept it under the rug. But yeah, I guess I'll continue. So we got to like the entrance area, and I got up. I was able to walk. I started feeling better. And I was like, I think I'm okay. And I remember him being like, yeah, it was a baby, so I think you're fine. We'll go back to... Because it was like a 2-part tour. You did that, and then you went to do the Aztec part. But you stopped back at like the place where the tour company is, and you would go for lunch.
Yeah.
So I think he thought, like, we'll talk to people working and see what to do. So we went back, and they were like very nonchalant about it. Like, everybody, like, they were kind of just like, oh, like, it was a baby. Like, you seem like you're fine. So we had lunch. We had lunch after this happened. Like, it was no big deal. Like, chicken, rice, and peas. Like, yeah. And I'm so optimistic. I'm like, okay, everything's great. Like, yeah. Because I don't know anything about snakes.
Your thumb is like turning blue.
Yeah. Yeah.
Did you have data? Because I would have been all over the internet at that point.
I did, because I posted on Instagram. So. Like, what was I thinking? So yeah, we went and had lunch, and I remember eating, and then we were like, okay, we're gonna get back into the van. We'll do the Aztec part of the tour. I remember my boyfriend at the time, he like was napping, because I'm sure we were exhausted because it was just emotional. Mm-hmm. And I was kind of just sitting there, and I started getting really sick, like nauseous. And I was like, pull over. I got out, and I just like vomited on the grass. And then my boyfriend at the time got out and started vomiting beside me because I think he was so anxious about everything. And I remember like, I felt like I had like diarrhea. This is too much, but I felt like it was going to come out of both ends. Yeah. And I was like, this is going to be the worst travel experience I've ever had. Luckily that didn't happen. But yeah, we were vomiting, and then I was like, we have to go to a hospital. Like, at that point, I was like, it's not cool. Like, my left hand started getting, like, triple the size. No. So, like, it was completely swollen. My left hand looked like a balloon. And I was like, I need to go to the hospital. And I just kept telling him, like, how far, like, as he kept driving. And he was like, soon. By the time we got to the hospital, it was in a little village in the middle of Belize. Like, it was like the tiniest little hospital. I got out of the car, and I remember I could barely walk. Like, I felt so weak at that point. So yeah, definitely if you ever get bit by anything, just get it checked right away. Like, because at this point, it must have been 2 hours after I got bit. Like, by the time we went back to the place to have lunch, and like by the time we got to the hospital. Yeah. But like, I think as a Canadian, you don't realize things about poisonous animals. Like, yeah. I didn't know anything about poisonous animals. I was like, oh, like, maybe, like, I'm feeling better at first, so it's okay. Yeah,
since the initial reaction went away, I probably would have been the same. Yeah. Like, oh, like, it was a baby.
It was a baby.
My body's fine.
It didn't hurt that much. Yeah. Like, when it actually bit me, I didn't feel that much pain. I think the guy that felt the pain, it was a 6-foot Fer-de-Lance, or it was a larger one, so it must be different.
Yeah.
So I remember just, like, barely being able to walk into the hospital. And then Ryan had told them, like, what happened to me and my boyfriend at the time. And I just remember them being like, what color was it? And I don't know who said it, but I think we said yellow. And right away they were just like, okay, like get into the room. And like they just started pumping me full of stuff. Like I got an IV right away. And I remember just feeling like really tired. So they must have given me like a sedative. And as this is all happening, we had like a villa booked for our final night in Belize. And I remember like the doctor coming over, and I was like, so just wondering, when are we going to be able to leave? I'm like, I have a villa booked.
I need to go to my villa.
Like, I literally am in the clouds. Like, I think everything's going to be great. Like, it was, yeah. So they pumped me full of drugs. We slept there for the night. So this is the 23rd. So yeah, our flight was the next day too. And we were in the middle of Belize. Like we were, I think 2 hours from the airport.
Whoa.
I think our flight was in the afternoon. So we were there in the afternoon by the time this all happened. So I was like, okay, we have 24 hours. We'll figure it out. But like, I'm going home. The next day was Christmas Eve. So I was like, I need to go home to my family. My family doesn't know what's happening. So I'm such an asshole. Like, I remember messaging my mom in the hospital, and I'm like, this is what happened. And she was like, it's not, like, don't kid around and all this. And I sent her a picture of me, like, in the hospital bed, and she just freaked and, like, started crying. And she's like, why would you do that?
Dan, I do the same thing. I went into the hospital for anaphylaxis in Australia. And right before Christmas, actually, like, same situation, I thought I was dying, and I was like, I'm not going to message my parents. I don't want them to worry.
Yeah.
I told them 2 weeks later, and
my
they were
God.
like, why didn't you tell us?
Yeah.
And I was like, because I survived, and I didn't want to ruin Christmas.
Yeah. Yeah, so yeah, that was nuts. And I was kind of just out of it for the whole day after I got to the hospital. I would kind of like come to, and Ryan would be by my side. He just stayed there the whole day. And I remember every time I woke up, I could see kind of the bruising going down my leg further and further and going up. So that was kind of terrifying.
Hurt?
Like it felt a little bit like tender. And definitely inflamed, like swollen. Like my leg got triple the size, like you would know right away. So the inflammation would just kept getting worse and worse. But the scariest part was seeing the bruising travel, because I was like, how far is it going to go? Like, you know?
Is that like the tissue? Because it was saying, where does it say? Let me check my notes here. Infection.
Yeah.
So was that the infection?
No, so I think it's just like a natural part of what happens. I don't even know all the details, to be honest. Yeah, I don't even know.
I mean, why would you? You were just like, fix me.
I think it had to do something with your blood. Like, the blood starts to kind of thicken. They said your blood will start to jelly almost.
The internet said they cause blood clotting.
Exactly.
Venom, so that's what it was then.
Yeah, so your blood almost becomes jelly-like, and that's why there's like a bruising that happens.
Whoa.
So, from what I understand, they gave me a tetanus shot because I wasn't sure if I was up to date with tetanus. They gave me steroids to stop the inflammation. What's it called when you want to like fight an infection? Antibiotics, and just corticosteroids, like prednisone, I think I had.
And they gave you the anti-venom, I'm assuming.
And anti-venom, of course. Yeah, so anti-venom. So yeah, we showed them the photo. Luckily, we had the photo. We still have it.
Did you get refunded for the second half of the tour?
Oh my God.
That's what I would be thinking about.
This is like... No, because this is the longest story ever, so it's gonna keep going. But we'll get to that part.
Okay.
We'll get to that part.
Okay, because my money saving mind is like I would be on that ASAP in my hospital bed. Like I demand a refund.
Yeah. So the first thing was the villa. Ryan called because he's like, we're not spending our night in the villa.
No.
And they didn't have free cancellation, so we lost all of our money. So like at that point though, it's like literally like whatever, like who cares? Yeah. So that was kind of a bummer. So we lost our money for the Airbnb, and then I remember that night I was like, we have a flight tomorrow. I was like, we have to make our flight. And the doctor was like, honestly, I can't tell you anything right now, but he is like, you may be here for a few weeks. And I was like, I'm not spending a few weeks here. And I was like, I'm very like headstrong. So I was like, we're going to find a way to catch our flight. Because I'm like, I need to go home. So the next morning, they did blood tests, and I don't know what they found, but my blood looked better, or like something was okay, I guess. And they pumped me full of more steroids, more stuff. I think it was 12 hours worth. And they said, like, you can leave, but you have to sign yourself out. Basically, if anything happens to you, we're not liable.
Yeah.
So I remember signing the paper, and I think we had like a few hours until our flight, and we were like, let's get the hell out of here. The tour guide stayed with us all night, and we drove to the airport, picked up my medication at like a little Belize pharmacy that I needed. And the best part about it is, like an idiot, we didn't have insurance. So I always buy insurance now, no matter what. And when we were leaving the hospital, we're like, okay, what's the bill? Like, and they're like, it's nothing. Like, it's free. It's universal healthcare. So in Belize, it's universal healthcare. So we were totally fine. We got no bill at all.
I always wonder, because this happened to me in India when I got bit by a cat and thought I had rabies.
Yeah.
I went to like hospitals to get rabies shots, and sometimes I had to pay for them.
Yeah.
But in other like in some provinces in India, not provinces, what do they call them? Like states.
Yeah.
It was universal. Like anyone could have a rabies shot for free.
Wow.
Yeah. I just thought that was interesting because I was like, I'm a foreigner. Like, why would it be free for me?
Yeah.
But yeah,
so
that's amazing.
Completely free, thank God.
Because that would have been a hefty bill.
Yeah. Like if you're in the States, like
Yeah.
God knows.
Yeah.
So that happened, and then we went to the pharmacy, got all the medication I needed. I think it was like 2 weeks worth, and it was like, I can never remember the whatever. I can never remember the name of it. But all those antibiotic.
Yeah.
All the medication, and it came, I think it was like $15 US.
What?
For everything. Yeah, including like prednisone, steroids, everything. And I think that was about 2 weeks worth. Got to the... Oh, this is really funny. I love this story. Okay, so we got to the airport, and the day before we left the island, I met like the cutest old man, and we were just like sitting having a beer together one day, and he had like a family with him and everything, like the friendliest guy. And I saw him at the airport, and I was walking, and literally my leg was like triple the size. I couldn't even bend my leg.
I can't believe you left the hospital.
Yeah.
I can't believe it.
Girl, if you went to the hospital, you'd leave too. Like, no. Like, get me home. I could barely bend my leg. My hand was triple the size, my left hand. And I was walking, and I saw him, and I remember he's like, what happened to you? And I was like, I was bit by a snake. And he was just like horrified. And he was like, you look like you're green. Like, I don't know how I look. Like, I just looked so ill, probably. Yeah. And then when we were getting onto the flight, I remember I started feeling sick again.
Oh, no.
And I think it was just like nerves, because I was like, what, like, should I be getting onto a flight?
Yeah.
And I remember when we were getting onto the flight, I was trying to act so normal. Like, I was trying to like act like I could walk. And I remember like trying to hide my hand. And I'm like, I don't know if this is a good idea. Like, should I be flying? So yeah, we got into the flight. No one said anything. And it was WestJet. I think an hour into the flight, I was just laying on Ryan. I started feeling sick again. And then one of the flight attendants came over, and he was like, oh, like, is everything okay? And we told him what happened. And he was so nice. Like, he gave me so much water, and he kept taking care of us. But he was like, you guys should have said something. Like, you shouldn't be flying. But we're like, oh, like, it's okay. Like, we're okay. Because, like, I don't know what happens with altitude, right? Like, I don't know if you can get a blood clot easier. I don't know what can happen. But
I think you can.
Probably, like...
Like...
I don't know. So I survived. My dad picked me up. So this was like Christmas Eve evening at this point. I think it's like 7 or 8 o'clock at night. And when we got off the flight, I remember just like racing to try to like go through the airport, because I just wanted to see my father. And Ryan was like, we'll get you a wheelchair. And I'm like, no, I don't need one. And I was like just going as fast as I could.
Limping
yeah,
along.
I'm limping and I'm running like through the airport. And he's like, what's wrong with you? Like... So I went to go see my family for Christmas, and I think Ryan went back to Ottawa, so he didn't come in the car with my dad. It was just me and my dad at that point. Went to go see my family, and I showed them my leg at that point, and I am not kidding, my leg like turned black. Like, no. It was like, yeah, like I have photos of it. It was like purple black. and it was going down to my toes at this point.
What?
So from my thighs to my toes.
You went to emerge.
So I went to go see my family, and right away it was really like, I can't describe it. It was almost like a balloon. Like it felt like you can pop it because it was so inflamed and thick. Like it felt like a balloon, like tight. Like I couldn't even bend my leg. So I saw family for like half an hour. I know, right? This is the craziest story.
It's crazy, but I'm also like, I kind of understand it, because if I was in your situation, I would also be like, I just want to be home.
Yeah.
I want to deal with this at home.
Yeah.
So it makes sense.
You want to be in a familiar place.
Yeah.
I don't want to be alone in Belize.
Yeah.
My boyfriend at the time, we just started dating. So like, I don't know. And I'm like, poor guy, like he's dealing with all this. So yeah, went home. I was there for maybe like a hot minute, and my family was like, you have to go to the emergency. And like I had to anyways, I knew that. So we went to the emergency, and I remember when you go to check in, the lady was like, so what are you here for? And I'm like, I'm going to use this to my advantage. So it was like snake bite. And I remember she was like, oh, like, but there's no snakes outside. It's winter. Like, I swear to God. And I was like, are you kidding? Like, I was like, no, like it happened abroad. And then she's like, okay. But yeah, so I waited at Emerge, and then I went to see the doctor, and I just remember I was like a spectacle. Like everyone was like, oh my God, like this is the craziest thing we've ever seen. Like we don't get to deal with this ever.
Yeah.
They were Googling what to do because they didn't know what to do.
That I was going to say, like in some respects, staying in Belize might have been better because they actually know how to treat it.
Yeah.
Because they probably do it all the time.
Yeah.
Whereas Canadian doctors are like, what's the snake?
Yeah. So I found out through the doctor that luckily I got the antivenom in Belize because they don't have it in Canada. It's not here. So I think there's a story where a man got bit by something, and he was from Vancouver, and he went home not knowing, and they had to order the antivenom into the hospital.
Yeah.
And like you're racing against time, so it's like terrifying, right? I remember the doctor was just like, you're so lucky to be alive, and he was like, you're a miracle and all this, and I kept saying, like, I kept thinking like, don't say that, because like I still am going through it. Like I don't know what's happening.
You're like, no, don't say that.
My positivity is going down.
You were going so strong for so long.
Yeah. So I just remember over like I think 3 or 4 days. So Christmas, it was like the 24th to like maybe close to New Year's. I was in the hospital every day. I had to keep going back to keep getting checked up on.
Wow.
And I had to get ultrasounds every day because they had to make sure there's no clots, blood clots. And my leg was so black that you couldn't tell. Because I guess if you get a blood clot, there's at least like color difference or something.
Yeah.
That's how dark my leg was. And I remember the doctor saying, you can get necrosis. So what happens is your tissue can start to die. And I was like, how would I know that? Because basically my skin's black.
Yeah.
And that's what happens. Your skin turns black. He's like, you'll feel excruciating pain. And that's how you know your tissue's dying.
Were you feeling pain?
No. So I was never feeling pain. But the kicker to the story is he said... And I think at this point I started researching a little bit, which was a mistake.
Yeah.
Because it freaked me out. But I think maybe, I don't know if he told me or if I found out, but up to, I think 4 weeks after the bite, you can get necrosis at any time. So once you start feeling excruciating pain, you have to rush to the hospital, and basically they have to intervene and...
Amputate?
I don't know if you have to amputate right away. They might have to try to cut it out and like deal with it. But I Googled it, and I Googled what bit me, and I started going through the list, and I was like, okay, it's that snake, like the best one that like nothing really happens.
Yeah.
And then they had the photos, so I compared the photo of what bit me and a Fer-de-Lance. It kind of has like a triangle shape, and it's like 2 circles above the triangle. That's how you know.
Yeah.
Scariest little like jaws that come out of that thing too. Like its head literally like opens like crazy. Anyways, I saw the triangle, and I knew right away it was that. And then I read up on it, and I was like, okay, pit viper. And it basically said like, you will die if it bites you, literally. And it said, if you do not die, wherever it bit you will be amputated. Like, necrosis will happen. And I remember, I've never lost it more than I've ever lost it in that moment. And I was like, I'm going to lose my leg, like, minimum. Like, it was, like, the most terrifying experience. Yeah. And then the most terrifying part about it is it can happen up to, like, a month after you're bit. So I think I read that maybe, like, a week into it. So for a good few weeks after, I'm just waiting to, like, feel excruciating pain. Anxiety of, like, the moment I feel pain, it's like, rush to the hospital. What will happen?
I live in so much anxiety that I'd probably, like, think I was feeling pain when I wasn't.
Yeah.
Like, I would be so scared.
Yeah. Yeah. So one thing
Did you go to work at this time?
No. Actually, and that's another thing. I remember, so I was bedridden for like a good 3 weeks. I just kind of had to elevate my leg and let the blood keep flowing.
Yeah.
I couldn't put too much pressure on it. And I talked to my work and I was like, I'll work from home, whatever. But yeah, I took a few weeks off, and slowly but surely, like, we kept going to the doctors, and he wrote me like notes not to work, obviously. They kept giving me more medication, and he was like, I think this is it, like, you look good. And slowly but surely the bruising started going away, and it kept going up my leg, where like my leg started looking normal, and like it was amazing. And I don't have any scars or anything. You would never know what happened. It's crazy. Like, I don't know why I got lucky.
At what point, like, how many weeks had it been when your legs started to not be black anymore?
I would say a good month. Yeah.
And could you walk during that time, or were you immobile?
I could walk the whole time, but it was almost like a balloon. Like, you couldn't really bend your leg. And slowly I could kind of walk, but the doctor told me to keep it elevated, like keep pressure off of it, because it could cause a clot, I think.
Yeah.
No, there's so much more to the story, though. So going back to the company, they were like a 5-star company, and everything was great with them. They had the best reviews in the world. And I told them what happened, and I was like, I'm really upset because your worker basically said I'd be okay. And he was like, good not to go to the hospital. I'm like, your staff needs to be trained, because I should have died. That's another thing, too. The nurse had said, how long ago did this happen? And I was like, 2 hours. She's like, within 30 minutes, you should have died. You shouldn't be alive. Like, that's another crazy part about it.
Do you think it was because it was a baby, so it didn't have as much venom?
That's what I thought, but someone told me babies are more dangerous because they can't control their venom. So if it's a larger snake, they know how to control it, where a baby will kind of just like keep spewing out their venom.
Yeah.
But, I mean, obviously, it probably didn't give me enough venom. I'm also a runner, so my legs are very muscular. So I wonder if the muscle helped. I don't know. Like, I feel like we'll never know. But another thing, too, is my fiance now, he had a lot of anxiety at the time. And I think I was meant to be bit, because I was like, oh, like, are we going back to the villa? Like, I was like, great. Like, I was calm.
You were like more fit to take the situation.
Yeah, where he was like, I would have like thought I was gonna die. He would have freaked out. And another thing too is, if you freak out, your heart races, and the blood goes throughout your body. And I think I heard like the venom will travel faster.
Yeah. And
when it hits your heart, that's when you have organ failure.
Yeah.
So
because you were able to stay calm, that might have been like the saving factor.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So yeah, the travel company, I was pissed, obviously, and I was like, you need to have proper training, because like if this ever happens again, like, he was like, put it under the rug, like, and nothing happened. So like, get your people trained. And I remember the owner was like, I was actually at the jungle when it happened. He's like, you guys should have called me and I could have helped. And I'm like, how do I know that? Like, you know?
The guide is local. Like, he's the one who should know to do that.
Yeah.
You would also think he would be the one to realize that it was a serious situation.
Yeah.
Like, we don't know anything about snakes.
Yeah.
If you live in Belize, I'm sure you have, like, some basic knowledge of snake bites.
Yeah. It's crazy. I think there's also maybe sometimes a mentality abroad that, like, people kind of push things to the side.
Yeah.
So,
totally.
Yeah. So, obviously, I wanted a refund. So I kept going back and forth, and I kid you not, I think we had like over 30 emails going back and forth with like,
they wouldn't refund you?
And he sent me a refund, but something went wrong with it, because I think like sending a refund abroad through a credit card, like something happened, and I was like, it didn't work, and we just kept going back and forth. And I remember at one point he got fed up and he was like, this wasn't my fault, like I didn't do this and all this. And I was like, really, like, come on. So I never got a refund.
Did you leave a TripAdvisor review?
I left the worst review ever. Good. I put my snake bite photos, everything, and TripAdvisor actually didn't post it at first, because the way I worded things, it was kind of hearsay. So if you say hearsay things on TripAdvisor, they won't post it. So
also,
I was like,
if you swear.
Yeah. Okay, I didn't know that. Yeah. So I think it eventually got posted. But like my one terrible review against 5,000 5-star reviews, I was like, it's not really doing much. Yeah. But my fear was, my nephew's like 5, so like if a kid got bit, they'd have no chance, because I guess the more grown you are, your body can handle it better. Yeah. But like imagine that was a child.
Yeah.
Like, so.
I think I was reading actually that most of the deaths are children.
Yeah.
Because they're smaller.
Yeah, and that was another thing. I think when I was in the hospital, they joked if I was like a village kid, because like I look pretty dark, and like when I'm traveling, I get very dark, so I can kind of blend in, because it happens in the jungle a lot to like the village children. So yeah.
I can't believe this.
Yeah. Yeah, so
Would you ever go back to Belize?
Totally. 100%.
I was gonna say, like, you and Ryan should go back and stay in that villa.
Yeah.
To be like, F you, Belize, right? Like, come full circle, we're back.
Yeah, because when I told this story to people are like, I'm never going there. And I'm like, no. I'm like, I would go back. Jungles, they kind of scare me now, to be honest, a little bit.
I'm actually very scared of jellyfish. Like, when I was in Southeast Asia, it took a lot for me to work up the courage to swim, because I kept hearing about people getting stung by jellyfish. Yeah. Like, really poisonous ones.
Yeah. There's, like, the box jellyfish, which is, like, super poisonous. Yeah.
My dad got attacked by a man of war when he was a child.
Yeah.
I should actually get him on the podcast to tell that story. Well, that was a wild story. Thank you so much for sharing this story. It was truly a wild ride. I'm scared to go into any jungle anywhere ever. Yeah, so that's it for part 1. Thank you for listening in. I hope you're not leaving this episode like too terrified, because I'm really hoping you'll tune in for part 2, where we're going to talk about more terrifying animals that you could meet while traveling abroad. Okay, see you on the flip side.